Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are catching up with some regulatory events that are moving at lightning speed. We are diving into a huge global corporate response to a policy shift that just dropped. And when I say just, I mean hours ago.
It's incredibly fresh.
The subject is the immediate fallout from the U.S. federal cannabis rescheduling decision, announced today, December 18th, 2025. This isn't just a political headline.
No.
It's the sound of a regulatory dam breaking, and it's demanding immediate strategic action from the big global players.
It really is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our source material is a press release, straight from Tilray Brands, which lays out their strategic response, and it really signals that they were waiting with a clipboard in hand for this exact moment.
They were ready to pounce.
Our mission for you, the listener, is to move beyond just the surface-level news. We want you to understand the practical, financial, and structural implications of this shift, and how a corporation like Tilray pivots so effectively.
Right.
So the big question is, what does this move immediately unlock for these companies, and what specific global experience are they leveraging to win the U.S. market?
That really is the core of it. This federal rescheduling decision, it's a profound regulatory catalyst. We're talking about moving cannabis from Schedule 1.
Where it's been alongside heroin.
Exactly. Moving it to a much less restrictive category, probably Schedule 3 or 4. And just to be clear for everyone, we are focusing strictly on the corporate, the regulatory, and the financial implications here.
Right, this is purely a business analysis of a policy change.
And Tilray's reaction, it wasn't just fast, it was structural. They immediately announced a whole strategic framework to advance their U.S. medical cannabis operations.
And the new company.
And, more critically, the formation of a brand new entity, Tilray Medical USA, Inc.
So this is a full-scale corporate re-architecture.
That's the perfect way to put it. It signals they believe this regulatory change is a genuinely new era for the healthcare business in the U.S.
Okay, so before we look at Tilray's specific plan, we really have to address the elephant in the room that explains why this news matters so much to a company's bottom line. The source mentions economic progress, but what exactly is the immediate, non-negotiable financial benefit of rescheduling?
It all comes down to three numbers every cannabis CEO has dreamed of eliminating.
280E. 280E.
For you listening, 280E is this notorious IRS tax code that prevents businesses trafficking in Schedule 1 or 2 substances from taking, standard business deductions.
Which means they can't deduct things like rent or payroll.
Nothing. It meant these companies were paying astronomical effective tax rates, often over 70%.
70%. That's just unsustainable.
Completely. They've been forced to pay taxes on their gross income, not their net profit. It's why so many have struggled to be profitable.
So if cannabis is successfully rescheduled out of Schedule 1,
the 280E tax code effectively just goes away for them. It ceases to apply. And this doesn't just improve profitability. It fundamentally changes the valuation and the viability of the entire U.S. cannabis business model.
overnight.
Overnight. This is the financial earthquake that underpins all the excitement from their CEO, Irwin Simon, when he talks about economic progress.
So rescheduling is an immediate, almost catastrophic injection of capital. If that's the financial trigger, let's pivot to the policy philosophy that he lays out. He stated they support this as a constructive and necessary evolution of U.S. policy. What's the argument they're making for legitimacy?
What's really fascinating here is how they articulate the necessity of it. Simon's basically arguing that this action finally aligns federal regulation with the overwhelming body of scientific and medical data that already exists.
So he's saying the policy is finally catching up to the science.
That's it, exactly. He argues that rescheduling creates a more credible foundation for research, for clinical development, and for getting that essential regulatory clarity.
And for a company like Tilray, that word credibility is everything.
It's not just corporate spin. For a company that operates across 24 highly regulated markets globally, credibility is a prerequisite for them to even enter the U.S. medical market with the kind of rigor they use everywhere else.
And he emphasizes this is an incremental step toward descheduling. That phrasing feels really crucial. It tells us they aren't just celebrating a win.
No, they're viewing this as a strategic beachhead. It's a stepping stone toward full federal acceptance and I think full pharmaceutical integration.
Which explains why they're moving so fast.
Absolutely. They are positioning themselves to lead the charge toward what they are calling an integrated state-federal medical cannabis framework within the U.S. healthcare system. They know what's coming will require super high regulatory standards.
And they're claiming they're the best equipped to meet them.
Right.
Okay, that brings us to the systemic changes they predict. Because Tilray is arguing this decision doesn't just benefit their balance sheet, it helps stabilize the entire industry. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the current U.S. market is, well, it's fragmented, it's chaotic.
It's the Wild West in many ways.
Totally. So Tilray predicts 3 massive systemic benefits. First, expanding access to medical research and clinical trials, which is currently so restricted.
By the DEA, the FDA, yeah.
Second, a major improvement in standardization. And third, genuine support for developing evidence-based therapies.
And standardization is the key word there. I mean, think about the current state of the U.S. medical market. It's a complete patchwork.
Where a dose in California could be completely different from one in New York.
Drastically different in composition, in purity, everything. If rescheduling forces a move toward federal oversight, even partial oversight, the immediate requirement will be standardizing product purity, potency, and format.
And Tilray calls these things research access, standardization, evidence. They call them key prerequisites.
They're anticipating the government's needs. They know that if doctors and hospitals are going to integrate cannabis into mainstream care, they need a clear, reliable, repeatable standard, just like any other prescription drug.
Which is where their global track record moves from just being impressive statistics to being a real tactical advantage. I mean, how can a company pivot this quickly and confidently to address that need for clinical standardization?
They're backing it up with some pretty hard numbers that show they're ready for a high-bar regulatory environment.
They claim they've spent years developing the infrastructure and the regulatory skills needed. And the evidence. I mean, they've led operations in over 20 international medical cannabis markets.
And that's not just distribution. That's navigating regulatory compliance in some very diverse, very complex jurisdictions. It's proof they have a compliance mindset. They're not new to this.
So to impress upon you, the listener, the sheer scale of this globally, they have served over 500,000 registered patients.
500,000, with a huge product portfolio. They say more than 200 registered medical cannabis products across all these international markets.
Now, let's critically examine that claim for a second.
Huh?
Does operating in Germany or Australia really prepare you for the current U.S. patchwork?
That's a great question. The host market conditions are totally different, you're right. But the advantage isn't the market knowledge per se, it's the scientific expertise. They operate at scale by upholding the high standards of quality and compliance that are required by these high-functioning regulatory environments.
Which the U.S. is about to become.
They have the internal systems built to meet, FDA-style quality control. Most current state-level U.S. operations they don't have that.
And the tangible evidence of that is their investment in actual clinical research. They state they've participated in more than 15 medical cannabis studies and clinical trials, all in partnership with leading hospitals and physicians worldwide.
And the list of conditions they've studied is pretty extensive.
It is. We're talking pediatric epilepsy, cancer-induced nausea,
PTSD, anxiety, essential tremors,
even alcohol use disorder and glioblastoma.
That existing library of clinical data, that is their biggest weapon in this post-rescheduling world. They aren't walking into the U.S. hoping for research grants. They're walking in with a portfolio of products already validated by data.
That's a huge head start.
It's a massive head start. And think about those 200 registered products they're touting. This is the difference between offering, loose flower or an edible, which are common in state recreational markets, versus offering targeted, measured oils, capsules, or sprays.
With precise, repeatable dosages.
And purity certification, which is exactly what medical practitioners demand. They already have the formats that doctors trust.
Okay, so they have the products, they have a compliance history, and they have the rationale. That sets us up perfectly for the forward plan of this new entity, Tilray Medical USA, Inc. What does their playbook look like now that the regulatory door is open?
Their whole strategy seems to be built on trust.
Right. They're committed to maintaining the highest standards of governance, patient safety, and operational integrity. It's a clear signal to incoming federal regulators like, we will act like a big pharma company from day one.
And that translates into 2 key strategic moves. First, they plan to strategically expand collaborations. They're targeting healthcare operators and medical professionals specifically.
So they're bypassing the traditional dispensary route and going straight to the medical establishment.
That's what it looks like. And second, they aim to introduce medical-grade cannabis products in targeted therapeutic formats. As we just discussed, these are the measured, standardized products that draw on all that real-world data they've accumulated.
The physician-driven insights from their international operations.
Exactly. They have an instant, high-quality product line ready to launch that just bypasses all the quality control issues that are inherent in the legacy state markets.
So that existing international database, it gives them this huge head start. They don't have to wait 3 years for a U.S. hospital to greenlight a Phase I trial for basic dosage formats.
They can just use their existing knowledge base to inform immediate regulated product launches. And remember the context of the parent company here, Tilray Brands.
They're not just a cannabis startup.
Not at all. They're a global lifestyle and consumer packaged goods company. They have massive operational depth, supporting over 40 brands in more than 20 countries. Cannabis, beverage, wellness, entertainment.
You know how to scale?
They know how to scale distribution, marketing, and supply chains globally. And all of that operational muscle is now focused on this new medical entity.
Wow. This is a critical deep dive into a major regulatory trigger event. We covered the immediate monumental financial benefit, the end of the 280E tax code, the policy philosophy Tilray is using to gain legitimacy, the systemic standardization they're anticipating.
And how their deep international compliance experience and clinical research are being deployed through this new Tilray Medical USA entity.
It's a textbook example of a major corporation executing a prepared strategy the absolute moment a regulatory door opens.
Absolutely. And as we leave you to think about this massive shift and the race for standardization that's about to begin, here is a final provocative thought that builds on this idea of evidence-based policy.
Go on.
The U.S. medical market for decades has been defined by state-level products, mostly driven by patient demand. Tilray is coming in with an established portfolio of over 200 products that were built on doctor-driven clinical data. So how quickly will that pharmaceutical-style approach to prescribing and dispensing erode the existing market? And what does that mean for the smaller, less standardized operators that just can't afford to keep up? That standardization race is going to define the next few years.